sometimes is the person initially saying, I don't know what's going on, but this shit right here ain't working, and I need to talk to somebody. It seems to me like if we had a veteran at various locations, that there was at least some comfort level to get the process going, it might be beneficial. I guess I'd like maybe hearing some of the panel's thoughts on that.
One, it would be beneficial, but look at it this way. How many additional responsibilities are you going to throw on another employee or a member of management on top of everything else that they have to learn? That's one consideration. That's just me being, leaving the emotion out there. That's me basically saying, oh, by the way, you have to do this, this, this. Oh, by the way, here you go, do this too. And what they're going to do from a management aspect of it, for me, I place my priorities on two things. One, what's the highest priority based upon the guidance I've received? And really, my second one is what is the most ethical or moral thing for me, personally, removing myself from it, that I can sleep at night. That's how I rack and stack what my responsibilities are. And I'm fortunate in my facility. I've been given a lot of leeway to handle that. I've got great leaders above me that support me. So, but how do you really qualify somebody? Key examples, like me, I have multiple combat tours. I've seen a lot of stuff in my career field, from post-blast to everything. How do I relate to somebody that may not have been in combat? So that's a hard thing. We also have to realize there's a lot of programs out there that supports veterans. If there was a website that's really a one-stop shop saying, if somebody has this, these are the agencies you can contact, or you can do this and really go down the line to minimize for like mental health. Okay, if somebody's having mental health, these are the agencies that are available to it. And educate the employee that's having the issue on it, and then basically say, these are the resources you have available to you to end up going through with it. We really don't have it, because everybody has their little piece of the pie, and it's not, what New York State might provide is different from what the state of Pennsylvania might provide. And what the federal guidelines are, or what the federal government provides. There's really not an easy answer for that, because everything is so spread out. It's really not on a one-stop shop to handle that. It'd be a lot easier if I had somebody who may not have any military experience that could go to that website and say, I know, okay, these are the resources you have available to you, either on an HR portion of it or even as a leadership portion of it. Just not one.
My thought was, and I heard a couple of times different people saying that a lot of, even though they may qualify for this, that, or the other program, they're not comfortable saying, kind of out of the gate, I think I might need some time off for FMLA, or whatever program. And I was just thinking, I wasn't thinking anything necessarily at a extremely high, well-trained. I don't have to be managing, okay? Just somebody who they could talk with, okay? That was a vet. They could maybe say, I've got some ideas on some different programs. Maybe I can help initiate, starting the process of walking through this. My fear is, I think, in at least some of the cases, there's a lot of, I don't want to call it denial going on. I think the individual realizes that sometimes something's going on, but they're not necessarily comfortable following traditional means to try to seek some help. And I didn't know if just, like Cary, talking with you, you spent over 2 hours or something on the phone with the guy from Connecticut, right? Yeah. And he was comfortable there, okay? And I don't think it's, certainly not because you're part of management. I mean, it was like another vet talking.
Along the lines of something like you're saying, another reason one of the issues that hope has come out of here is, like our employee assistance programs, I don't think, just in this general area, we don't have anything designated specifically for veterans. And I know we speak a lot about combat veterans, but let's talk all veterans. I mean, everybody's history or their time in the military is written different. We're all across the globe. We're asked to do a million different things. Anybody who's been there, I mean, but with saying that, is that when I made the comment about having people trained, and maybe I did pick on management a little bit, but we we do need an avenue or something to go to, and I know we have the crisis line, but I've heard horror stories about the crisis line. I know we have things, so if locally we can have that mini stepping stone to get to the big stepping stone, I think it would be fruitful. I mean, in the popular, and again, I stress, I know we may have a lot of managers in here that say, well, we don't have any veterans issues. Well, you know, like I said, a lot of them, we talked about this too, is that we keep it secret. I mean, not every veteran, and we were talking to somebody over the winter, not every veteran wants to wear the hero's badge. Some come home, they get off the plane, and I've seen this with my own eyes, they take every bit of information minus their paperwork they need for down the road, and it's in the trash. Everything, accommodations, everything, pictures, everything. I mean, it happens. They don't want it. They don't want that. They want to say, okay, I did. Let's move on with life. But what happens is sometimes there's, and I use the word delayed. You have delayed issues of recognition, I should say, or recognizing an issue. And I can give you a specific example. And from a rep standpoint, I had a case with an individual who was very confrontational at work and essentially walked off the job. And I got a hold of him, I got talking with him, and I said, what's going on? And he said, it's got some issues. I said, well, talk to me. Let's go for a car ride. I said, I got nothing but time. We went for a car ride. We started talking. Come to find out, he was a Vietnam era vet. This is 40 years after the fact, and it's still affecting him on his job today. I would like to tell you that it was a Cinderella story, and I was able to save his job. He had done some very egregious things at the facility. We couldn't do that. But what we did do was we got him the proper help, because he told me, I'm with the EAP, and to use his terms, and excuse my language, them sons of bitches don't do a damn thing for me. I will not go to the EAP again. I said, whoa, let's get you to the right channel. We drove him to the proper veterans counselors. He got his help. We got him signed up for Social Security disability. Like I said, we weren't able to see the job, but we got him on the avenue. And the best thing about this that I want to tell you, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm not. 6 months after the fact, out of the clear blue, he calls the office. Hey man, I just want to say thanks. Bottom line, nothing more than that. But put him on the right track. So sometimes there's issues that are delayed. Sometimes they get fed up with the information they're being given. Sometimes they need maybe need a little poking. There's a lot of different things that I think that we're hop skipping around. That I'm not saying that we're going to cure them all today, but that we should recognize and how to maybe put them together to get the piece of the puzzle to get one picture.
Scott, did you have something?
You know, what the auto industry does, particularly
You were, just so we know, formerly with the auto workers,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yeah. And what the auto workers did is they had EAP peer counselors in each facility. And those were people that were trained to recognize the signs. They weren't counselors, they were referrals. And so if you had an employee that had attendance issues, you might, before they got in trouble, you might direct them over, say, why don't you go over and talk to this person and have a conversation. And they were trained. It wasn't extensive training. They went away for a week, a year. And in the big plants, they were full-time. In the small plants, they were reduced like a steward. If they had somebody, it's confidential. All they did, there was trust between management and the union to say, look, I'm taking an hour today, I got somebody that I gotta talk to. Give you an example, and this isn't veteran related, but I was leaving the plant one day and I saw a young gentleman standing at the time clock. His name was Jimmy, and I said, hi Jimmy, how are you? Jimmy turned around, tears strolling down his face. He said, Scott, my wife left me last night. She took my 3-month-old son and left me. My life's not worth living. And I believe to this day he was gonna go home and do harm to himself. And I said, have you ever talked to the EAP? He said, I don't know what that is. I took him over to the EAP and said, this is Jimmy. Jimmy told him the story. He looked at Jimmy and he said something that surprised me. He said, Jimmy, this may not turn out the way you want it to, but let's figure out how to deal with it. And he said, thank you, Scott. That was my key to leave. I called him 2 hours later and he said, Scott, I think you saved his life. He's downtown in town. The EAP didn't handle the problem, but he got him to where the proper care was. And a lot of times employees are much more apt to go to a peer for that type of help than to go to the employer. Because they may be afraid if they go to the employer, they're admitting weakness and there may be issues that come from it.
So this is a peer, you said at big plants it was a full-time
Yeah.
position, so this is an hourly employee employee.
Hourly employee, yep.
Receive training, they're also working on the floor?
No, in the big plants, that's all they did.
I see.
But out of the big plants, 3,000 or 4,000 people, you could cover that. In the smaller plants, they were just like a steward. So if they needed to counsel somebody, they just tell their supervisor, look, I'm gonna be off the job for an hour, I have somebody I have to talk to. And there was enough trust between management and union to say, we don't wanna know who, what, or where, do what you gotta do. And the people felt much more comfortable talking to a peer who was trained to look for the signs, and if they saw the signs, they knew where to refer them.
And did you find that, I assume it had the effect, at least in some cases, of solving these issues or addressing these issues before they turned into a hard discipline and then a grievance and then, a fight, an arbitration? I mean, did you find it effective, in terms of nipping some of these problems in the bud? I mean, you had your share of grievances and arbitrations in any case.
Very effective, extremely effective. In fact, we took it outside of the auto industry and put it in a lot of the other industries. Just that story I told you about Jimmy was the story I used every place when I said, look, this is something I wanna put in place. We had the peer counselors all talk with each other. We would get them together once every 2 or 3 months. If they had an issue, they could call another peer counselor, say, look, just talk to somebody, here's what I heard, what have you seen? And so they would network as well, and it was very effective for getting people in care.
I had a case of a guy who, after high school, enlisted in the Army and went to Iraq, had a very difficult tour with the 10th Mountain Division. 4 people in his company were killed, 3 in his platoon. His best friend in his squad was blown up. So he comes back to Fort Drum, and he is experiencing a lot of classic symptoms. He's hyper alert, starts drinking too much. He gets up 5 or 6 times during the night. He's married with little kids. He walks the perimeter around his house. But he continues to be able to function. He applies for a job, and he gets a job with a large company that covers a lot of upstate New York. Goes into that job, is doing very well, takes a temporary position, and he starts there in March and is actually scheduled to get a permanent position in October. Gets notified by the Army, we're bringing you back. This time you're going to Afghanistan. So he asked the company about it, and they inform him that because he's a temporary employee, he doesn't have any rights. He still continues to have the PTSD symptoms, goes to Afghanistan, and functions fine in Afghanistan because, as he told me, nobody thinks you're crazy when you have paranoia. Get up in the middle of the night and walk around. He comes back, applies, and gets a job at that same company. He never misses a day of work. He's a model employee. His wife is a nurse. She can see what's going on. He doesn't get the help he needs, and one night in a bar, after having way too much to drink, there's a fight in the bar and somebody gets seriously injured. And there's a question as to whether he was responsible, but part of the problem is there were other people who said he did it. He didn't have a clear memory. He continues working, gets himself an attorney, doesn't tell the company that there's a problem, and ultimately he's facing a felony assault charge. He pleads to misdemeanor assault and plea bargains 6 months in the county jail. Explains the situation to the union. They apply for a leave of absence, 6-month leave of absence. They have letters from his platoon leaders. They've got letters from his doctors. He had been diagnosed with PTSD 7 members of his squad from Iraq were being treated for PTSD. Company denies the leave of absence.